In the kind of professional world, everyone needs to have a brand.
Glad you brought that up. I love that topic. Sorry.
Yeah, that's an identity. That's like, okay, you're creating this persona that will be like an interface between you and like the recipients of your gifts to the world, in this kind of in the cultural context that we're in. So it's like, okay, like how can I create a persona which speaks like authentically. It's like, okay, I'm really showing up and giving people what I want to give here through this persona, but one that's also accessible for them, because if you're too eccentric or like not really mindful of what people need to really receive something, then you're not going to connect. I think identity, it's all about safety, because people identify with such like narrow things these days. It's like, okay, I'm going to identify with like my sports team, and maybe my gender, or people like they get attached to certain things that they identify with, and then they kind of limit themselves to connecting within kind of that scope. This is why I think also like an animist worldview is so essential, because in an animist worldview, you're actually open to connect with the entire more than human world, because you're identifying with more than just your humanity. So the question is kind of like, why are people so stuck on identifying with such specific things that like the need for a brand is there in the first place,
And what is a brand?
What is a brand? I mean, a brand is just like, I guess like a digestible package of identifications. My brand is, like environmental and feminine. So people who are like self-identifying with those labels, like they will be likely to resonate with my brand and open to connection in what I'm offering.
Robin said he's a baseball player. So now if you look at him online, he's a baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
So that he didn't want the brand.
When it comes to like creating a brand intentionally, like you want to have that thing that exists out there that people can identify with and serves as a portal for connection. But you also want it to be something that feels really authentic to you, so that like the connection that happens is one that actually is serving your well-being. Because if Robin gets contacted by a bunch of baseball players, he's probably not going to be super like nourished by those connections, right? But if he had a brand as like a entrepreneur ethnobotanist or something, I'm sure that the people who would be contacting him would be more interesting and enlivening for him,
So the source of that one
yeah
had nothing to do with his volition.
Right, exactly.
And he didn't create it.
Yeah.
But the way that evolved, why that evolved, how that generically is the basis for the principle that we're talking about here, philosophically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm kind of addressing, because, it's like that didn't exist. Now that's, because when I grew up, there wasn't anything. So for you, it's like that's your life in a way.
Right. Yeah. It's really like we're in that,
Yeah. So how did it get from A to B? I'm curious how you see that, but I can see it from, a 74-year-old point of view.
I guess what comes to my mind is like what's happened with DJs, where it's like, or like just dance culture in general, like nowadays it's like DJ is on a stage, elevated, everyone is looking forward, facing this individual, and if you look at how things were like a couple of decades ago, people weren't all like facing one direction. People were facing each other, it was a communal thing, a lot like less centralized, and so I think as an example, that kind of illustrates the point of just like how siloed things have become, how centralized things have become. I think like there's just a general lack of like flexibility that people have, and availability for many things, for complexity, such that people really need this whole brand thing, so that it's fast, it's easy, it's it's like, okay, like I look at you, I look at your website, like 10 seconds, I know what you're about, I know if I'm identifying with you or not. People don't have the spaciousness, the slow rhythm to lean in more, and
But the cause and effect of that is really interesting. And I listening to you talk about it, it's great, because you're just like expanding out into it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see like this narrow point of view of how it happened, but
yeah, I'm curious to hear.
Well, just, the algorithms. Basically, you have a system of technology that evolved into data mining. So all of this is the result of data mining,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're saying it in a much more generous way, but it seems extremely focused on the systematic elimination of our autonomy.
Right.
And so we don't have, I feel like a PhD intellectual now saying it that way. I said it better than I thought it. But yeah, I mean, we don't have autonomy because our agency has been taken away by the algorithms. And that means that somewhere in the process of technology quantifying us and using us and mining our data and turning us into like robotic brains that can be just extracted into some kind of science fiction-y awful future. It's like there's no reason it happened, but it just had to happen systematically because the purpose of the system of communication that the internet became was one that they needed to be able to use the data to make money. And they needed to find a way where our heart and soul and community and connections were limited to their money action because the driving force in that system is it costs money to do it. And so it wasn't like somebody bad did something bad, but it's also not something organic or humanistic or animistic at all. It's really just like stainless steel. It's some kind of a inevitable result of our fitting into that box. Like as humans, we're fitting into the algorithm box. And everybody, since AI is starting to be aware of the dangers and the mystique and the mysterious parts that they didn't see a few years ago, only, in the next few years. But when you're talking, I'm like starting to realize, okay, so this is how it works. It's like, if you see clearly, you don't have to judge it. You don't have to have like it's them getting us, a conspiracy. But of course, if you put those ingredients, you're going to bake that cake. They had the right temperature and the right ingredients, and the recipe worked.
Yeah.
But now we're in it.
Yeah, all this stuff around algorithms and kind of these systems, they're really problematic, but it's hard for me to like feel like there's a clear cause and effect here, because like where did these things come from? Like what systems were already in play that like allowed for these things to flourish, and
No, but data mining, if you just look at Google making all their money on data mining. So anything you put on the internet is looked at from statistical analysis as a potential for profit. And that profit can only occur when that process works in that way. So it's pretty straightforward. Like there isn't another explanation or complication. It's not mysterious. Right? They didn't know what to do. Okay, when the .com thing happened, it was like everybody's all excited about the internet, and my perspective is pretty limited. I wasn't involved in tech or anything, but so you had this .com thing. Everybody's like, oh, we have to invest in this stuff that we don't know what it's going to do. They invest in it, and then they go like, oh, we can't charge subscription fees for everything. Nobody wants to pay it, so we have to give everything for free. And then when they give everything for free, then they realize, oh, how do we use that? And they didn't know for a while. They just didn't know. And then they did. And you were born after this even happened, right? But when they figured out data mining, it was like, okay, every click can, I don't even understand it completely, but it's like there is some value in what you do when it relates to the algorithms, but there's no value in it otherwise. And the AI is kind of the crux of that. There's the new crack cocaine of that kind of data mining.
Right. So I think that this whole thing around being a brand, like that's, like that's within the context of wanting to kind of play within the system. And of course, like that's a game, and that's a game that you can skip entirely, but it also like it is difficult to skip because that's where so many of the resources are, like if you want to have an income and you're not, like in a position where you can go without an income, like that's
it's a given.
it's like, okay, like you're expected in in this day and age to pay for things to get your needs met. And well, how do you um, get the income you need to pay for those things? Then like you're playing this game, with having a brand and stuff. I know many people
But we didn't need that when I grew up. So I'm like, I feel it as an option. For you, it's sort of that's the whole world. There isn't an option.
Well, okay, so I know many people like in the eco village world who really said like, okay, fuck this. Like I'm not gonna play this game at all. And they're living in community, they're working in the garden, they're sitting in circle, and they're living a very joyful, beautiful, simple life, so that's an option. You can also like
And primitive cultures, like if you go to Tibet and people had nothing and the Chinese took everything away and tortured them, they still were happy every time they got together with nothing. They didn't need anything. Or the people in Brazil here, they just have a tendency to see the little things as substantial and enough.
if you're satisfied, like if doing something like service work, then it becomes way less necessary. It's like, okay, I'm working this job, I'm a barista, I'm a construction worker, I get the income I need, I'm living, it's facilitating a lifestyle that makes me joyful and meets the needs of my close community. Then forget the brand. You also don't need it. And
If you're a farmer, you don't need a brand.
you don't need it. But like if one has aspirations and ambitions, within this game, and they're like, okay, like I want to be an ethnobotanist, and I want to be like a great ethnobotanist, and I want to meet all the other great ethnobotanists and accumulate resources and capital to push innovation and growth in the world of ethnobotany. Those ambitions, and you're playing within this game, then this whole thing around a brand becomes way more relevant.
I was trying to make it into a bad thing, really. I'm just saying that understanding why and how it operates,
Yep.
you need to have a distance from it. So your
Yep,
identity
right.
has to be now,
Yep.
Hyper aware of it, because
Yep.
a few years ago you didn't have to be, and it was
Yeah,
just a new thing. And so again, you've grown up in it. It's so much. You're only 26. It's like
Mhm.
ridiculous. I don't even comprehend anybody under 30. Like just like people used to say they didn't like anybody over 30. You ever heard that one?
Mhm.
In the 60s, don't trust anybody over 30.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Thing.
that was a thing.
All right. Well, I think it's important. Like, I think a lot of people, especially young people, they don't realize that this is a choice that they have.
That's what I'm saying.
They're like, I have to have a brand. I need to be on Instagram, and I think it's there's a layer deeper than that. Like, not only do they not realize that they don't have to have a brand, but they're not even aware that they are spending energy building a brand. Like they're like, okay, I need to post pictures of me having a good time on social media. Why? Because that's what people do. But it's like, no, what you're doing actually is you're spending energy on brand building, and you're just building a brand of yourself as a person worthy of esteem or whatever. And it's really unintentional behavior. But if someone is like aware of like, okay, I want to gather resources, I'm going to do that by building a brand, and I'm going to build a brand that's specifically targeted towards these fields. So I'm going to get on social media, but I'm going to be sharing content that's valuable to these demographics. Like it's focused. Fine, completely fine. But this kind of like unintentional, like automatic brand building activity that so many young people are caught up in, especially through social media, it's really toxic. And people, I think, deeply start to identify with that persona.
Well, the algorithm is in charge, and they have a limited ability to control it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And but like where this whole dynamic comes from, I think is really interesting. And like I think all the algorithms are like perpetuating this system, and of course they're born from it, and it's very connected. But to kind of like try to see like, okay, where is this really coming from? I tend to turn towards, there's a field of discourse that's called a spiritual ecology, and it basically posits that like, all right, our disconnection from the sacred nature of reality, however you want to package that, that's really like a way of looking at the core of these systemic issues. I was at a festival this summer, Boom in Portugal, big psychedelic festival, and there was this guy giving a presentation there about the AIs that he's creating, and he wants to give a voice to the bodies of water in the world. So what he wants to do is to put a bunch of devices that gather data into the land, into the water, use AI to like go through that data and then create an avatar that's the face of the lake or whatever that'll speak to you and tell you what's happening in the lake. And every lake in the world is going to have a QR code next to it that you can scan with your phone, and then you can speak to the lake because it has all this data. And
Well, what would speaking to a lake be like?
and I'm just there with my head in my hand, and I'm like, the lake is speaking to you.
Yeah.
You know, like it doesn't speak English, but it doesn't take so much presence of just sitting and being with the body of water to be in relationship with it, you know? And this kind of like these layers of abstraction, you know, that people are taking for truth without realizing like, oh, okay, like actually like connection here is a lot more simple and available, you know, without all this abstraction. It's just I think that's kind of like what's really at the root of like these things that then like emerge as issues with brand and identity in the world of the internet.
They're not seeing the animistic aspect. They don't see the humanity or the complexity of the way you experience things.
Right.
They've just like with the synthetic drugs, they've taken the essence that they want out of it, but they lost its connection to the bigger picture.
Yeah, they're you know they're caught up in these like layers of abstraction. Any mental construct, any thought, these things are best approached as tools, not truths. You know, and all these layers of abstraction, these are tools that people are using to interface and navigate reality without awareness of them as such. You know, they're taking these tools, these layers as truths, basically like fundamentally dissociated from reality.
Like you said, not being aware, not having awareness, it seems to be the characteristic of the last 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where that came from, but it just hit me. Wow, that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all had awareness. It was just something we didn't have, you know, like deep spiritual awareness, but our basic nature was to be aware.
Yeah.
They're like blinders. Like blinders have shut in
Exactly.
a whole generation.
Yeah. All these layers are blinding.
But you didn't grow up with that. You didn't have blinders. What you had was the end of that.
I don't know about that. You know, like I mean,
You had a little of it.
like look at you know, I went back to my high school a couple of months ago to give a presentation about the work that I'm doing, and so I was there and I was trying to talk to these 14, 15-year-olds, and they were such just like dysregulated messes of being, you know. And there were these two young girls there, and that were actually able to hold a conversation, which was remarkable. And I was like, what is up? You know, what is happening here? And they were both holding on to clearly a deep sadness, and they were like, yeah, everyone is just completely stuck on their phones, you know, on making TikToks and all these things that like, you know, like stereotypically you'd hear like grouchy old people complain about, like all that stuff, you know. It's like people are so just like the youth of today are so caught up in these layers of abstraction, and their sense of like priority as to like what is really alive and conducive for connection and harmony are just so like out of this world weird. I guess I'm less optimistic that like things are going to get better sooner than you are. Maybe I think.
Well, I feel the beginnings are happening. I'm not saying it's happening, but I feel like they're forcing, like just even you describing how awful it is. Like we saw everybody, you go to a bus stop and they're all on their cell phones. It's like, oh, what is that? Now they don't talk to each other. But now that's already old. Remember that realization.
Right. Yeah.
So now it's like they're looking for something. They might not be finding it, but the fact that they're looking, that's the beginning of the new thing.
I mean, sorry.
Like just you saying this thing about abstraction, I'm just like, oh, I get it. Yeah. They can have that discourse. And if they can have that discourse, then the inevitable thing is they'll know that they're being distracted and abstracted and fucked up and nothing's working, and then they'll have to change because there isn't anywhere to go. They can't keep getting worse and worse. And okay, the Gen Z revolution now with all the violence. I just saw Mexico, there was another Gen Z thing. They're like, we're not going to take this shit. You're not going to give us any money. You're not going to give us any world. You're not going to give us any future. You're not going to give us the ability to understand ourselves, to have an identity, to have anything.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to fucking take over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's like a totally different than the French Revolution, where it's a political thing. It's a survival thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
there's always that connection to Marx's,
Mhm.
money and all that. This isn't about money. This is about your zeitgeist, about as a human being. Like you said, you're abstracted.
Mhm.
You're being told that everything you care about in your future are all compromised and sold out already, and you're not going to have one. And they've already dehumanized the future, because the transhumanist thing has portrayed something that they inherently know is looming and threatening them.
Mhm.
They see that as the zeitgeist.
Mhm.
So they have to change.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my optimism.
Well, I can see that.
I'm talking so fast. It's so funny. I love it because you guys are all so smart, and I'm like thinking, can I even make a sentence? But
Ayahuasca's a good thing.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Make some space.
it makes just clarity.
Yeah.
So much clarity.
Like when I go for walks, when I visit my dad and we go out for walks, he's very willing to like say hi to everyone we pass by.
Oh, my girlfriend is a
And,
big thing about that.
And if he passes by someone like a younger person and he says hello and they don't say hi back, he's like, "What the hell? Like, why are the youth so unavailable these days, right?" But if he were to meet one of these youth who is like really like pushing for social change and paradigm shifts and like trying to open like the heart of compassion in the world, and he says hi to them and they stop and they're like, "How are you?" He's gonna be like, "Oh, I'm walking this way. I'm not available," So like I think the point I'm trying to make is I think him and his generation, it's like they're available for connection, but on a more superficial level,
Oh, so good.
And
I love that.
what I'm seeing like in the
That's
world
that's
today,
what I feel.
there's kind of this like
It's a new era. It's a completely like huge shift, a monumental ocean change of what humanity is.
yeah. So what I'm seeing like in like the modern day is like there is kind of this like fanning out and like diversification of beingness within humanity.
Yeah.
Or yeah, there is this youth culture that's steering towards openness, towards compassion, very trauma informed, like willing to go there, all this stuff. And then you also have the crypto bros who are interfacing with the world through an NFT, and they can't even like fathom having skin contact with someone else. And they could grow up being like millionaires in an apartment who never eat a fresh vegetable, So like all of these worlds are manifesting at once, more and more, And when people say like, "Oh, will the future be like a dystopian, like a crypto punk tech world or like a solar punk green eco space?" I think the answer is both and more. Like the way that humanity is showing up, it's just going to continue diversifying more and more, and just the variety of how we are is going to just expand further and further. And it's unfortunate that like politically and capitally, financially, like the former world, which is a bit more techy and disconnected, seems to be holding the power right now. And I think they're always going to hold some power, but that could dissipate and spread out more. It's hard to say, but I don't think it's going to be like a future for humanity. I think it's going to be really many. The question of spirituality is interesting, and like I would say, like in the more progressive world, spirituality is also very trendy. In some ways, like people are really moving away from organized religion as it's been presented to us traditionally. So these labels of like, Christian, like Islam, Hindu, whatever, people are like in this cultural shift, moving away from these labels, and they're just identifying as broadly spiritual, and they say the universe, it's like, oh, the universe opened my third chakra today because the moon is in Leo. So therefore, like this is happening, and it's just this very syncretic, a little bit ungrounded, like neo-spiritual thing, and it's very interesting. I think there's a lot of value to that, but I also think like there's a lot of value in the roots of traditions, and like what's been really like tested and held within these containers, but also like I think a lot of it is about coherence and and depth. Like I was doing this kind of like spiritual shopping for a few years, and what I realized is that like, words, like meaning kind of builds behind words like water behind a dam, and
Beautiful.
if you're jumping around between a bunch of different traditions and kind of like containers or frameworks, it's just going to be very difficult to really build like a cohesive map of what you're trying to navigate, because different words are used for different things and in different contexts, and like language being kind of like the operating system of reality, in the mind, like that's not very effective. So like
Well, what's not effective?
this kind of spiritual shopping of jumping around.
Yeah, because you're not picking a direction.
Yeah,
You're going in
exactly.
every direction all at once.
So it's this,
So you don't go anywhere.
this like neo-spiritual thing that you're seeing in the world today, I think like, yes, like there's benefit to it, but I also think that if people are really interested in like connecting spiritually, like like developing the capacity to like listen to that subtle voice within, that speaks truth, that speaks aliveness, finding a tradition that resonates and building depth with it can be more fruitful, than kind of like.
Well, it's the only thing that's definite. That's the way I look at it. It's
Mhm.
not more fruitful. It's like, it's almost, I want to exaggerate that statement, because without a lineage, you can do anything, but you're not going to trust to go outside your comfort zone completely. You're only going to trust to go outside your comfort zone as much as it pleases your ego for the next 10 minutes or for the next hour or for the next time when you're absorbed with your own views about everything. And like Dale was saying, a lot of the billionaires, if they came here, because we were talking about that before,
Right.
they would feel, he thinks they should just go in a volcano and just kill them all. But he said there's a psychosis that they don't want to see their faults.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have a person who you trust gently to sort of point out to you that maybe you're not capable of seeing this completely.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you don't have that, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to believe that everything you're doing is great and use up your life, and then it's over. And you go, wait a minute, I didn't open up to my open, uncertain, like, I don't know.
Yep.
There's so many ways to put it, but I guess just the mysticism, the sense of gone beyond what's concrete and logical.
Yep.
You have to go beyond logical. And that's the thing about devotion. That's why we're both into kind of mystical traditions. We want to go beyond logical, because logical will only get you in a circle.
Right.
You're always going to be back to some other logic.
Yeah.
You can argue anyway, and you're always got another way to argue. But if you give up arguing, you can actually make definite changes, definite perspective changes, definite enrichment and nurturing, and all the things we're experiencing through ayahuasca.
Right. Yeah.
It's only through that logic is a very important thing, very useful, because otherwise you can be crazy.
Yeah.
But aside from the being crazy part, I think I heard that once a long time ago. Aside from that, logic isn't necessary.
Yeah, I think that shift, it also really needs to be held in community, and like, again, like
Community is about love. It's not about logic. That's the reason you have a community.
Yeah.
And people would say it's logical to be in community, but the reason it's so tenuous is because it's not logical. It's based on some kind of love and some kind of intuition.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this whole shift away from the logical into the more like, spacious, intuitive openness, like, and the sense of safety that you need to have, like a teacher that you trust to point things out to you, or other members in your community. You're like, okay, like I'm actually open for feedback from this person, from these people, in such a way that I can shift and grow.
Hey, Robin, come here. He's all right.
He's stoned.
Yeah.
That's cool. You're stoned.
Hello.
Yeah, we've been doing good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my window open, so I.
Oh, you heard something?
Yeah, well, I'm in and out of sleep, so.
Okay, nice.
Then I hear
Right.
you, I'm like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah, cool.
It's just so, I love the fact that you just walk by and I can just put you into the two cameras, and like, you're probably only in one camera, but actually you're not even, because I think we cut off at his waist, so your head is just in. Hey, why don't you sit down for a second, because I'm going to get some water.
So we were discussing like having spiritual community and being open for real feedback, you know, and all this stuff.
Put it anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kind of tie that back to identity because, you know, identity being what you are identical with, like when you identify with something or someone, you see yourself in it, and then you trust it, so you can actually be open to it. You know, yeah, you know you feel safe, and then you're actually like willing to find that edge. You know, or it's not like you're not in your ego bubble anymore. You're pushing on that edge and really like expanding like what you're identifying with, you know, and like becoming just generally more available to life, you know, and connecting to a broader community, you know, like maybe first if maybe you're a racist, you know, and you're only connecting to a certain ethnical group,
Right.
and then you can open to connecting to other genders, and then to all of humanity, and then to the more than human world, to the plant world, you know, to non-corporeal beings, to like, you know, it's just this like expansion of openness of relation, um and you know I think like existing in that openness, like then like a lot of the systemic issues that we were discussing earlier, like around algorithms and stuff, all that stuff will just very organically evaporate, you know.
Mhm.
And because people aren't stuck in their narrow identifications, they're not giving power to those narrow systems, you know, and like change will be affected at a deeper level.
And I'm also like I'm a person, I don't like to work alone. You know, I always like to go to the office, you know, like I love to have this chat, you know, when getting a coffee, and that's where magic happens, you know. So I'd like to create something, you know, like build something where from the experience you had, you know, what worked, what didn't work in terms of being a human, being with humans, and in a corporate context, you know, just like to build something where I think this could work. And if it doesn't work, then maybe you can tell me what works, because I think that is there, you know, like there's the in companies there's so much knowledge. If you start to like opening up a discussion, you can solve everything, I think. But you know,
It has to be flexible,
yeah,
creative.
So yeah, this is a very exciting time. I'm telling you, I'm really excited for tonight.
Me
Like
too.
I'm a little scared again and nervous, but I'm just so excited to yeah, like kind of like you think now you have a bit of a feeling for it, right? So in the, like I'm not less nervousness, but a different one, like a more like, oh yeah, like this is not hurting me, you know, like this is good.
Yep.
So
Me too. I'm excited.